Hello and welcome to another special edition of the ROKER Report Podcast. Today we are joined by a controversial guest, I think some of you would say, but I'm delighted he's came. That is former Sunderland player Lee Clark. He's kindly given up his time to come to the ROKER Report studios and talk about his time at Sunderland, discuss everything, the fallout from the end, even a bit on his managerial career at the end. So first things first, Lee, how are you? What are you up to these days?
I'm very good, thanks. Thank you for the invitation to come and speak and maybe right a few wrongs and put the true story out there about my time at Sunderland. At the moment, I'm just enjoying a bit of family time. There's jobs in the management game that I've turned down. There's jobs that I've been after that I haven't got. And I'm just waiting for the right opportunity. So to go back in, not desperately pushing for it, but if something arises, that if it shows an interest, I could try and go for it.
You did 10 years, haven't you? 10 years in the managerial game?
Yeah, and it's changing all the time. The way the game's gone in terms of the players and the agents and how the game works. There's a big change around, so it's becoming more of a head coach role. At all levels really, and then the rest is done by other people. So in terms of finances, which I would prefer it that way, there's obviously been times that we'll talk about a bit later in my managerial career where it hasn't worked out there.
So before we get going properly, we want to talk. We're going to have to start with Newcastle, and we don't often talk about Newcastle on this podcast, but for you, we'll have to start there. So you came through Newcastle's academy, local lad from Wallsend, and jumped to 1997. Keegan's left, but what was the circumstances around you leaving?
Well, actually, before Kevin left in the January, which was FA Cup, Peter Reid in the January window when the club was still in the Premier League, but they were fighting for their survival.
Just 96, 97?
Yeah, in the January transfer window, leading up to that, Paul Bracewell was Peter's assistant, and in his staff. And they tried to sign me in the January, which I didn't really want to be moving. I didn't want to go anywhere then in the January. I know that they'd agreed some sort of figure or roundabout figure when Newcastle that they'd be looking for. But it wasn't the right time for me, and then it wasn't the right time for the club, especially, within a couple of days of the window opening, Kevin Keegan had quit. So Kenny Dalglish took over. And during that period from January to the end of the season, there was talk of us signing an extension to my contract, but the crucial thing for me was wanting to play every single week, and we had such a big squad and quality that wasn't always the case. I went on a run of games in January where I was playing really well, and on top of that I was starting to score a few goals. I'd scored 3 in 3 games, and then we came to an FA Cup tie against Nottingham Forest, and I got left out because Peter Beardsley was coming back from an injury, I think. And it wasn't the fact that it was Peter, because I think of him as one of the best ever players, if not the best ever player I played with. So that wasn't the case. It was, if I wasn't going to keep my place in the team after doing so well, it was going to be difficult for us going forward. So I basically made my mind up then that I was moving on come the summer. And when the transfer fee got set, there was a few clubs: Manchester City under Frank Clark, James Smith, Derby County, Sunderland, and one or two others, even Middlesbrough had a go as well. So and it's an opportunity as well to move up north. Celtic at the time was sniffing, so I decided to speak to one or two of the clubs. And to be truthful, I only out of courtesy only decided to speak to Peter out of courtesy, Peter Reid, because he had kept in touch with us. He kept pestering us about coming to Sunderland. And I didn't have any intentions of coming, but out of, as I said, respect for him and how he'd done things, I said I would come to meet him, and I met him in Manchester. And after 2 or 3 hours talking football, also sharing a glass of champagne here or there, I decided that he was the right man for me. I think that's what I picked. I picked the manager, picked the person who I felt would be good for my footballing career. And obviously I didn't realise how big it would be, even though, I'm from Newcastle, I'm a Newcastle fan. I didn't realise how big and how much of an impact it would make around the region, really, that I'd gone from Newcastle to Sunderland. So when that decision was made and it was announced, we decided to do the press conference very quickly, and the day of the press conference things escalated. Peter did say in his conversations he would get us into the England squad. I didn't think he'd realise how quickly, because the weekend I signed for Sunderland, I was announced in the England squad for the Tour in 1997. So I thought he was a good manager. I didn't realise how good.
I mean, personally, I couldn't imagine playing over 200 games for Sunderland than moving to Newcastle. I just couldn't do it. So what was your initial reaction when you hear Sunderland? Because, I mean, if I was in your position, I'd be like, I'm not going there. I'm not.
That was my initial reaction, and it was out of courtesy, and I had a great relationship with Paul Bracewell as well. I knew Bobby Saxon very well. Bobby had been my assistant manager at Newcastle under Jim Smith. Paul had been a mentor of mine when I was a young player, playing alongside him at Newcastle. So, and obviously I'd seen from afar the enthusiastic and inspirational how Peter was, with these players, and when I got to meet him, that come through massively. And it was a football decision. I love football. We'd had our first child, Jack, and we're both from the northeast, me and my wife. So that played a factor in it as well, of course. But what was a lot of the things was the plans going forward. It was obviously they're going to be the first season in the Stadium of Light, so they took us over to there, which was still a building site, but it was coming near to completion. Very, very impressive stadium. I thought, well, this would be a great place to come and play your football. I knew of the plans going forward, which unfortunately, because I left so quickly, I didn't get the chance to use of the Academy of Light as well. So I knew that they were building to be a Premier League football club. They just suffered relegation, but the plans that the manager had, the players that he wanted to keep from the previous season and the signings that he was looking to make, I thought, well, yeah, let's go for it. It could be exciting, and there's the rest to see as history.
Were you ever worried that Sunderland fans wouldn't accept you once you'd signed?
Well, I knew that I had to win them over by how I played. I think it was all about, and I had confidence in my ability that I could deliver the level of performance that was required to make them appreciate that I was there, and I was one of their players. And thankfully, the rewards I got, the individual rewards I got from supporters and people like that, was I must have been doing something right on the pitch for them.
You touched on how long it took you to make the decision, but from start to finish, when you first meet Peter Reid, was it a case of on that day you decided Sunderland, or did you go home and have to?
No, I decided that was the club I was signing for. I shook hands with Peter before we left the meeting to say that I was going to sign, and myself or my agent informed the other clubs that I was going to go to Sunderland. So the deal was completed very, very quickly, to be honest.
And what was the one thing Peter said in that conversation that made you want?
There was lots of different things, but it was the fact that I was going to build a team around myself, the players that he was keeping, the way he wanted to play the game, the facilities, the infrastructure, the club, all those type of things. And obviously I wasn't going to have to leave, not root to my family. Later in my career I did that, and it didn't become a problem. It wasn't as big as a problem as I would have thought, but at that time it wasn't the right thing. And so everything, it ticked all the boxes for me. The only one it wasn't ticking in terms of where I was from, how I was brought up, me family, me wife's family. We laugh about it. They know that it's a short career and you've got to look to get the best you can out of it.
Did you ever lose any friends over the move?
I didn't lose friends, no. We had there's been instances where, my youngest lad, Jack, we bought him the Sunderland kit and we had him dressed, and I took him to my father-in-law's, and my father-in-law's answer was to his grandson, I love you, son, with all my heart, but you're not allowed in my house with a red and white kit on. So things like, listen, and I used to still go and watch Newcastle play. If they were playing midweek and we didn't have a game at Sunderland, I'd go to St James's and watch the game, and there was friendly banter. Never got out of hand, never got where people were like abusing us or anything like that. They understood there wasn't an issue, and it was the same the other way on. I never suffered any kind of anything from the Sunderland fans whatsoever either. On the other hand,
okay, we're going to jump towards your actual Sunderland career now. So you alluded to it before, but we moved into the stadium. Like, I mean, what was it like that first season? Playing there with all, Kevin Phillips, Niall Quinn and everything else. What was it like?
It was fantastic, the way the team was set up. The players were had in all different... It was just like the perfect team, really, the perfect squad where round pegs in round holes and people who were very good at their jobs playing in those positions. We had, obviously... we're set out as a 4-4-2. The manager always talked about we're playing high tempo football, especially at the stadium, and like to get the crowd lifted, which we did on most occasions. At that time, it was a championship club, but it was still in the top 6 to 8 supported clubs in Britain at the time, which was a phenomenal achievement when you're a championship club. And I felt most of the time we used to have the fans on the edge of their seat with the football we played. We had the big man and little man combination up front, but you're doing a disservice to Big Quinny to think that he was just a 6'5" hide up in the air and he'll head it type of man. He had a fantastic touch. He used to love having the ball at his feet and the quick interplay we used to get between the likes of myself and Niall and Kevin and Alan Johnson and Nicky Summerby. When you think like young Michael Bridges couldn't get in the team, he was an outstanding young player, and he was plan B, off the bench, and so that tells you the quality we had in the group. Full backs bombing on, Chrissy, Macon, and Mickey, and solid defenders. We had experienced players at the back. When I first got there, Richard Ord, massive Sunderland lad, and Andy Melville, and then obviously Darren Williams came through and Jody Craddock, so I had good combinations there. And then obviously my bouncer really was Bawley if there was any issues. I remember I used to just always say it was that whenever he won the ball, make sure I was a couple of yards from him, and he never used to say it that politely, by the way, but that was the words to that effect, and so he could just get it to me and we could get off on our attacks, and I like to think that I complimented him, and if I've ever got targeted and I got kicked, just Bawley would just make sure that I told him which number or whoever had done it, and there might have been repercussions. Obviously Alex Ray as well, who was an outstanding player, could do most things, box to box, great lad. We had a great, all the successful teams have been involved in, and people might get sick of hearing it who've never been involved, but it's the camaraderie you have. We had a great group of lads who were constantly taking the mick out of each other. It was laugh a minute on the training ground, but when we had to do things seriously, we got down and worked. But it was a great... how well we got on off the pitch showed how well when we done things on the pitch, I'm
going to talk about the playoff final in a minute, but that season we finished 3rd. Do you think we deserved to finish higher? I mean, I would have thought...
Well, we went on a ridiculous run, I think, from the end of October till the end of the season. Because we were a little bit stop-start from the start. We're getting decent results, then we'd throw a disappointing result. We'd go to Reading and I think we got thumped 4-0. We were awful on the day. And but it went from October to the end of the season where we really clicked, and we just missed out. And it just sums up the situation. You finish so far ahead of the rest in the playoffs, but that's what they're there for. That we knew the rules, the excitement, we were confident, and I can never rewatch it. It's always talked about as the best ever playoff final, and it gets rerun and shown many times, and I never watch it back because
you've never seen it back.
In football terms, it was the worst feeling of I lost the playoff final as a manager with Huddersfield, and those two times,
wasn't it?
Yeah, those two incidents are the worst I've ever felt on a football pitch.
So that game itself, I know, 4-4, it was a ridiculous game, but how did it feel when Mickey Gray misses that penalty, and what do you at that time think?
Well, you're just gutted for Mickey because if ever you wanted someone to be the hero of a game like that, you wanted it to be Mickey for Sunderland. He's red and white through and through, loves the club. And you know that if you remember, Kevin was the main penalty taker, but if he wasn't there, I used to take them, and we were both off the pitch in the penalties. Kevin had got an injury, and then when we went 4-3 up and there was about 30 seconds to go, I thought I'd had cramp, and Quinny come across to try and stretch, but I'd actually pulled my calf. So Quinny was trying to stretch my leg off, thinking it was cramp, and it was a pulled calf muscle, so I had to come off. But I thought the game was wrapped up. We only had 30-40 seconds with a little bit of added time, and then obviously they got that equaliser again to me, and then it went to the lottery, didn't it? And even then they couldn't be separated. It went round again, and unfortunately for Mickey, and everybody involved, you know, he missed the penalty, and it was a horrible couple of days. We were stopping off in Peterborough to hopefully have some celebrations to get promoted, and Peter, the manager, said we're still going to do the same thing. We've got nothing to be ashamed of in what we'd done that season, and it was very quiet for a while, and then obviously we'd had a few beers, and then things started perking up. But then the day after, for a couple of days after, it was awful, and felt for Mickey, and you know, made sure I think we all stuck together. We made sure he was all right, and he was, and he showed not only is a fantastic player, he had a great character, because obviously come back stronger again. We did as a group, we came back stronger again as the following season.
And that day, that morning, how does it feel knowing you're going to be at Wembley? There's going to be, I think it was 80,000 people there, massive Sunderland end. I mean, how do you deal with that psychologically?
Well, it's what you play football for. It's what you dream of, isn't it? So here's your opportunity, full house at the one of the most iconic stadiums in the world. But you also temper that with the pressure that is on the game. It's classed as the most expensive one-off game in football, world football, because what the rewards are, and who you're playing for, your supporters who've been lucky enough to get there, the ones who unfortunately are back here in Sunderland watching the game on TV, and everyone involved with the club, the directors and their wives and kids and all the staff that work there, because most of the people in football clubs are supporters of that club. So, and you what you would do in those 90 minutes or 120 minutes makes them feel, and they were just as down as us, you know. It was, and I think that's part of the reason why it hurts so much, because you know that so many people are willing you to do well. Niall
Quinn had said that he'd sort of at the end of that game said, right, it's not going to happen next year, we're going to go up. You know, what actually did he say? You know?
Well, we all just thought that. The conversations that we had in the dressing room, in between the feeling of just so, it was horrible. It's hard to put into words, but we were determined that we're not going to be in that scenario where it does become a lottery. It's not on the most consistent team. It's like a cup. It's a mini cup competition, and you get a bit of luck, and you know, we could have went out. You know, we remember we lost the first leg of the semi-final, and if things hadn't worked out at Stadium of Light, we mightn't even have got the chance to get there. So yeah, we're determined. We knew that if we had started the season the way we went from October to the end, we would have won the league. Mm-hmm. There was no team that we're worried about. There was no better. We weren't sitting in the dressing room, and I don't think the manager was ever sitting thinking, I wish I had them players from there. I wish I had them players from there. So we just made sure that we cracked on, and the pre-season was strong. I missed quite a bit of pre-season. I'd had a double hernia operation, which I had to put off the previous season for the last few months just to get through. And so I'd had a double hernia, so I missed the first few weeks. I actually only played one pre-season friendly, which was the last one against Hartlepool down at the Victoria Stadium. Then obviously a week later, half an hour into the first game of the season, I broke my leg. So, but I made a quick and clean recovery. The club were brilliant, how they looked after me, behind the scenes, the medical team, the board of directors, anything that I needed. Because actually when I broke my leg, my family were away on holiday, so I was left to my own devices for a bit. So the manager and the staff, the way they looked after us was superb, and I was determined to get back as quickly as possible and stronger than ever. So got back in the October. It took me a while to...
It was Everton in the League Cup.
Was it Everton?
Down here. We won on penalties.
Right, and then, that's what happened. And then I think I started a couple of games, and the first couple of games were quite all right for us in terms of my level of performance. I think that was just playing off adrenaline, really. But then, because I didn't play a lot of reserve games in me recovery and me rehab, and then I petered out a little bit, and I was, for about 3 or 4 games, I wasn't playing at the level I wanted myself to be at, and then it just kicked on again, and we started storming, and we started flying through the table again, and obviously at the top for most of it. And ironically enough, we got promoted at Bury, Gig Lane,
5-2,
and then won the league at Oakwell. Was that right? And me and Kevin Phillips scored. We beat Barnsley.
It was on the telly. I think it might be a Friday game.
That erased all the horrible and awful memories we had from this previous season. The way we'd done it, we went up in style. We went up playing in a fashion that excited the fans, and that was told by the numbers that were coming through the turnstiles.
I want to touch one final thing on the playoff season. The Sheffield United game in the semi-final, was that one of the best atmospheres you'd been in? Because it's often heralded as
electric. I think they give us the belief, because they could have come with a bit of an apprehension about them, a bit nervousness. But from that first whistle, and as I said to you, the manager's last message was always to start with a high tempo, be on the front foot, play in the opposition's half. And from walking out that night, the atmosphere was electric, and they give us that extra belief, I think, the fans, that they were right behind us and they were going to give everything they could to try and help us get the result. And we've done it, and I think they played a massive part in that.
Was that one of your best memories at Sunderland? Or was there another one that sticks out?
I had many. I loved, the 2 years I had in terms of playing terms were fantastic, and for me personally, but also some of the games were played in, some of the football were played them seasons, the style, the goals, outstanding, really outstanding.
Kevin Phillips, Niall Quinn, obviously we did touch on them a little bit before, but they were phenomenal together. But what were they like to play with, and were you surprised when they did get in the Premier League how good they were together in that first season?
Not at all. I wasn't surprised at all. They were a class act. Could see Niall was the experienced man who everyone knew about, but as I said at the start, got pigeonholed as just a big target man and was anything but that. Had a magnificent first touch, brought people into play well, was very intelligent. Don't get me wrong, could use his height and his head, but wasn't just a big lump who flicked the ball on, or would direct passes with his head, or direct his opportunities of scoring with his head into the goal. It was great for a midfield player like me who liked to break lines and get beyond the strikers, because if a ball was played in either of those two, Kevin or Niall, and Michael when he came on, they had the ability to slot them little passes through for me to make those runs, or if I was in the final third, for them to make me look good with my passes because of their quality of their movement. So when they got to the Premier League, I would have been actually surprised if they hadn't done as well as they had, because I knew the qualities that they possessed, the two of them. They were just the perfect foils for each other. You talk about people complimenting each other. They were absolutely perfect, and they had a magnificent respect for each other. Kevin looked up to Quinny in every sense of the word, but certainly, and Quinny loved playing alongside Kevin and got as much enjoyment out of supplying some of Kevin's goals than he did scoring himself. He was very unselfish. He was a proper team player.
We had Kevin Ball on the podcast last week, and when I asked him to sum up you in one word, he said partner. So what was your relationship like with him off and on the pitch? Very strong.
Obviously, he's Mr. Sunderland, so when I got there, I think he probably looked and thought black and white so-and-so. But I think he quickly found out that I didn't, when it came to doing my best and working hard every day, and he's seen the efforts I put in on the training pitch and what I'd done in a match day for the club. Those allegiances were put to one side, and I was there to do my best. And as was said, we ended up getting a strong friendship that's still strong now. And he was the governor for me, really. He looked after us in every sense of the word. Our families became close. Later on in the careers, when we moved down south and we shared a flat together in West London, and when we played for Fulham together. So, he was a great guy for me. I got to know Paulie, you know, obviously the pre-season, we had a couple of trips, and then we had Ajax to open the stadium, if you remember. And Paulie was Mr. Motivator, and obviously as we're lined up in the dressing room ready to go into the tunnel, one of his traits was to grab the dressing room door and give it a few swings. And Ajax game was to iron out any issues at the stadium. So as he grabbed the door and started swinging it back and forth to motivate us and him, the door came off in his hands. So that was me thinking, well, I know what I've got to be doing for this guy if I'm going to win him over. Nah, but he was brilliant. He was. It delights me now to see that the new regime at the club are trying to bring him back into a more important, inclusive role, because he needs to be right in the middle of everything that's going on in the resurgence of the club, because he, not only what he's done in his career here and what he's learned, but the type of character he is, he can help the club get back to the level it was at.
Are you surprised he was never offered the manager's job permanently? He had a couple of spells caretaker.
I do, yeah. And because I think there would have been no more passionate man ever been in that manager's chair. Because I know he's not from the area, but he's become to love the club. He is, without a shadow of a doubt. So I'm disappointed for him. Hey, there's still time. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know.
I think everyone wants Jack Ross to stay because he's doing a terrific job. But when you're a manager who's working, even though the club is Premier League in terms of its size and its infrastructure, the reality is they're in League One. So if he keeps doing well, the manager, there will be clubs out there looking in the future to think, well, could they poach him away? But I think it would take a ridiculous job to get him away from here, because I think he sees what's ahead.
Yeah, big potential.
Absolutely.
Final thing really on that season, we finished with 105 points. Was the record until I think Reading broke it a few years later. So where does that rank in your career accomplishments?
Up there with the very best. I mean, I've won it 3 times with 3 different clubs, and in those 3 different times we've broke all kinds of records, and we've won it by playing magnificent football, and that year with Sunderland was no different. So it's got to be right up there. Obviously, never got to play in the Premier League for the club, and obviously I know we want to speak about that later. That's but it's got to be right up there. When I did get to the Premier League, we had with the other clubs, obviously got the chance to compete in UEFA Cup, which is now Europa League, and the Champions League as well. So obviously they're standout times for me as well. But no, in terms of what was achieved and how we've done it, it's right up there.
So we're going to talk now about you leaving. I mean, we all know about obviously the T-shirt incident. So before we talk about that, did you know that you were going to be leaving at the end of the season?
Well, yeah, because we basically had the league wrapped up, and it didn't get made official till obviously Bury,
and then done until about September.
Yeah, but we were so far away, and we had the double-headed semi-final against Leicester in the League Cup, if you remember. And the second leg was at the Stadium of Light, and I remember after the game I was disappointed because obviously we'd lost the opportunity to get to a cup final. I was disappointed, but I knew, and I believe I'm an open and honest man, and I didn't want to go behind the manager's back for what he'd done, and I wanted to be honest with the club. And after that game, actually on the night of the game, I knocked on the manager's door and went in to see him. Andy Gray was his big pal, and he was working for Sky that evening. And he asked us if I wanted Andy to leave, and I says, no, Andy can stay. And I need to speak to you. It's not possible for me to play here next season, because Newcastle are in the same league. I kind of bring myself to do it, and I wouldn't want to go out on the pitch and not give absolutely everything. If I was ever put in that situation, would I change a habit of a lifetime and go out there and not give everything? I don't know, because I didn't want to put myself in that position. And a typical really cool comment was, get out my office, but not in those nice ways. You're not going anywhere. We're going again next season, and it's going to be built around yourself and a few others. So that was that, really. And then when people hear that, they probably think, well, the T-shirt incident was probably even more of a setup, and it actually wasn't, because when we get onto it, I'll tell you the full story.
But was it bittersweet that would achieve promotion and you knew that you weren't going to be able to enjoy the fruits of your labour and the team's labour in the Premier League?
Of course, yeah. Of course, I was sad, because I didn't really particularly want it to be like that. And as I said, if I did stay in when those games came around, I don't think in my heart of hearts, deep down, if I'm walking onto the pitch, I would have, because it's just not me. It's not how I'm going to do things. It's like when I've joined in later in life as a manager or a coach in a five-a-side in training, I've still lost my head because I want to win. And so that's my personality. So I'm thinking, if it got to that stage, would it have been like, I didn't want it to be in my mind like that. I didn't want to think people, and if I had an indifferent game in those games, had I not been given anything but my best, I didn't want to shortchange the fans who'd been fantastic. It was for 2 years, so it was a tough one for us. It was a tough one psychologically in terms of how I was going to change it, and as history says, the way it happened certainly doesn't sit well with myself.
What would have happened if we'd drawn Newcastle in a cup competition? I mean, that must have crossed your mind at some point.
Of course. I don't know. As I said, knowing the person I am and know how I go about my job and how meticulous I was, I used to even, if ever I'd had a bad training session, it used to hurt us. I used to drive home from training and think, well, that'll never happen again. And why was I so poor today in training? Or why was me passing off? Or why was me touch not so good? Or why was me finishing? Or whatever. So, hey, listen, it's what was in my mind. But when it comes to reality, would that have been the case? I don't think it might have been, because I'm not that type of person. I've had many, many poor football matches in my time, in my career, but what I've never had is someone say it was in any particular game that I never give anything but my best, and so I don't think my personality would have allowed that, but I was in a predicament, would have been in that position.
So, can you talk us through the day of the FA Cup final? So, did Sunderland know you were going to be going?
The manager knew. I asked permission like I had the previous year, and the manager granted us permission, but obviously in no uncertain terms told us that he didn't want us to wear any colours.
Obviously.
And we made a bit of a weekend of it, and so we, socialising with Newcastle fans, friends. And then on the Saturday morning before the cup final, we grabbed a black cab and got dropped off at a pub in Baker Street that was owned by a Newcastle fan. And as I got out the black cab, a few guys come across, and you're thinking like they want pictures or whatever, and they slipped this T-shirt over the top of my head. And if you see from the photograph that was in the media, there's like me with a cricket hat on, like pointing at the T-shirt as if to say, what's this? So within about the T-shirt being on and me looking up, within about 30 seconds, because I'm not even sure if camera phones were around then. I don't think
black and white green picture.
It was just, you could just hear camera lenses going off so quick. And then I took the T-shirt off, went to the bar and stand with my father-in-law, and who was a staunch black and white, and he even said, "Oh, that could come back and give you a bit of bother." That, and I said, "Do you think so?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "We're not too happy with that." Like, and nothing happened for a few, and it was about a week before pre-season. I was going to the Northumberland Plate race meeting and got a call to say from the local paper to say that they'd received this photograph and they were going to use it. So I had to speak to my agent and explain what had happened, and obviously had to speak to the club. But to go back to the day, I think there's a lot of people out there think I was walking around London with the T-shirt on and ridiculing people with this, and that wasn't the case. It was on for a matter of 30-40 seconds, and then the photographs were taken. And
So who was it who put the T-shirt on?
there was a few Newcastle fans, four or five. I knew a couple of the guys. That's why I thought, oh, they were just coming over to say hello. And then when it got whipped on, and then it was a huge error of judgment. And it's now I'm more, obviously I've been in management, I'm more mature, and it's the biggest regret of my career, because I never got and I never get the welcome I get back at my other two clubs because of that incident. And you don't expect to, because you're biting the hand that feeds you, really.
So if Lee Clark was managing Lee Clark then, so you right now are managing that incident, what would you have done?
I wouldn't have done anything different. Well, to be honest with you, Pete, I still wanted us to stay. When we went in with my agent to see the chairman, Bob Murray, for these talks, and he obviously put across how unhappy he was and disappointed by what had happened. Peter was in the meeting via a conference call because he was in the south of France. I think he might have been on a scouting mission or doubled it up as a holiday, and he was adamant that I still wasn't going anywhere, and the fixtures had come out, and he didn't say it as politely as this, but he was saying that I'd be in the team at Stamford Bridge in the first game of the season. So, but then obviously as he went off the call, the chairman reiterated to myself and my agent that couldn't be possible. I wasn't probably in a position where I could turn the fans back on my side, and we understood that, and we had to move on. So
was that the moment that it was decided that you were going to move on? Which were the teams that were interested, and why did you end up at Fulham?
Well, I went to Fulham for Paul Bracewell. He just got the manager's job, and he contacted us. And I never ever thought I'd leave the northeast for football reasons, and I never even thought even more that I'd end up going to London, because when I played down there, and we played on a Saturday afternoon, we'd go down on a Friday and I'd go for a walk on the Saturday morning. I just felt the place was huge, far too big for a northern lad. So when I ended up taking the opportunity to go there, and it was my reasons for going there were so similar to the Sunderland situation, in that I seen the ambition of the club, obviously the wealth of the owner and what he was doing with the football club, and the training facilities. The stadium was obviously getting redeveloped, but there was a lot of restrictions on it in terms of because of where it is in the middle of London, and but most importantly, the ambition of the owner and what he was trying to do with the football team. And they just took Chris Coleman from the Premier League to League One at the time, and I joined them in the Championship, and they wanted to and when I signed, about 4 or 5 days in, I went to a supporters trust meeting, and they were having a celebration because it was to the day 4 years where the club had finished 91st out of 92 clubs. And here they were competing in the Championship with an owner who wanted to get them to the Premier League. So that's what got us there. And like 7 great years down there.
So what was the reaction from friends essentially within the club when they see that picture? Does Bally shout at you? Does Bally sympathise? I mean,
there wasn't. There was a bit of banter about it. I've got no doubts Kevin and people like Mickey were disappointed deep down, because they had helped us settle in at the club, and if there was going to be any type of reaction, they had smoothed that over for us. So I would have thought a lot of the lads would have been, even the lads who'd signed with me, Kevin Phillips, Chris Maguire, and Nicky Summerby, probably, I think, in a strange sort of way, they would have been disappointed by what had happened, So whatever's come from it in the since, I have to accept it was down to my ill judgment on the day.
How did it feel watching Sunderland do so well when they came up? I mean, was that a sense of regret as well that, you weren't with that team who nearly, finished in the Champions League positions both years? And
listen, yeah, of course. There's always that thought, what might have been, what could have happened. And I've no doubt that, would have complemented what they were doing in there. But you can never look back. The thing that for me, when I look back, it's the only sour part of my career, because I've been back to the stadium of late to watch a Tyne Way derby, and I've got to say that the reaction overall was great. I was quite nervous going into the stadium and around the stadium to find out what the reaction would be. So yeah, the course is regret, because you want people to remember what I'd done on the pitch, and that's all been taken away with one incident off the pitch, really.
And do you also regret the fact that, had it not been Sunderland, if the team was called something different and wasn't based up here, would you have ever left? If we was to say Everton, and it was the same team and everything was the same, would you have stayed?
If I was ridiculing Everton?
No, I mean, forget the incident.
Yeah.
If Sunderland wasn't Sunderland and you'd moved in 97 to, say, Everton, who were in the same position, would you have ever left?
No. Would I have left because I was nervous about playing against Newcastle? Because I obviously played against Newcastle.
No, I mean,
when I played for Fulham.
Was the club almost like perfect in every sense to you, other than the fact that it was the rival in Newcastle?
Yeah.
And you would probably have wanted to have stayed if it wasn't for the fact.
I was enjoying my football. I was enjoying my life. I was playing for a manager that held us in high regard. I was playing with teammates that had respect for us, and I had respect for them. I enjoyed playing with them. I enjoyed being in that company. The fans were really positive with us. So, yeah, of course, that goes without saying.
We've had a few former players tell us sort of how they felt, interviews they've done with the website. And Dickie Ord was complimentary. He said that you were a lovely lad, but you just had a nightmare with what had happened. He says there was no malice in it at all, but he was a lovely lad, and he gave 100% every time he went out. And Bawley sort of echoed that, and he said, I knew Clarkey very well by that point. Obviously, it was a disappointment, but it was also disappointment in the bloke that had done it to him. Nash,
that's my nickname. Yeah.
Was a really good lad. If he'd came to the club and said, I support Sunderland now, I would probably never have trusted him for the rest of my life. He said he was a Newcastle fan and he wasn't going to change. I liked that. So,
no, and that's it's good to hear with people who, if you cut them open, would be bleed red and white, and there was two lads to say that, and that's the point I'm trying to get across. It was never meant in that way. It was obviously the wording on the t-shirt. It isn't the greatest message to send, but it was certainly wasn't my thoughts and what I was thinking. Whenever I was in this playing for this club, etc.
Okay, well, I think we're pretty much done with that now. You've finished off the grill for the t-shirt, but I want to talk finally a little bit about your managerial career. So you took the Huddersfield job in 2008. Mm-hmm. You were there for 4 years.
Yeah.
You left in February 2012, I believe. But you did a really good job there. I remember you went on a ridiculous unbeaten run, which I think was about 45 games.
43, it's the record. I beat Brian Clough's for 42.
Yeah.
So I got presented with an award from the LMA for that. And in professional sport, to go through nearly a full campaign, especially in the EFL, which is 46 games, is a phenomenal achievement. There's people who try and detract from that and say there was a lot of draws in there, but we actually accumulated 96 points in those 43 games, which would win with any league, with still 3 games to go. And we built a club. We built a club with the backing of a brilliant owner, Dean Hoyle, who is a massive fan of Huddersfield Town, became very successful in his own business life and decided to put some of his wealth into his football club. And we decided that we wanted to build a young, hungry squad, but that had value. And we done that. We bought some terrific young players. We brought some terrific young players through the academy. And they made the club be successful, and also added value when they not only done the job for the club on the pitch, when they were deemed that they needed to go, or they'd outgrown the club at the time, they got sold for substantial transfer fees. So yeah, it was a fantastic period.
Was it much regret that you weren't able to get the side out of the division, despite the fact every year you were generally the team everyone wanted to be?
Yeah, because we obviously improved year on year. We got knocked out by a strong Millwall team, and as I said, we were quite young in the playoff semi-final. Then we got to the final, and the scoreline suggested it was a bit more one-sided than it was. It was much tighter game. They scored the goals quite quickly, and then 3-0. And then we started then a bit like what happened at the time at Sunderland. We kicked on. We got over the disappointment, and we were strong. We were third in the division. I think we had a game in hand on the two teams above us, and when the owner decided to make the change, which was a bit surprising at the time.
And then you went to Birmingham.
Yeah, great opportunity for us at a big club. Massive expectation. Great stadium, great training ground. People behind the scenes, owned by a guy from Hong Kong, Carson Young,
who's now in prison.
And within about a week of me accepting the job, he got put under house arrest, so all his assets were frozen. So we had a predicament on our hands, and within a couple of months I quickly realised and was told that we had to not trim the wage bill, smash it. We had to take 60 to 75% of the wages off the bill somehow, and we had some experienced players earning a lot of money. And from the day I walked in the door to the day I walked out, we actually achieved 75% of the wage bill off. We'd gone from £26 million wage bill to £5.6 million.
So you took over from Chris Hughes?
I did.
Who took them to the playoffs, I think?
Yeah, and the expectation for us was to get beyond the playoffs in automatic. But when that starts happening and you have to start... And what we ended up having to do, because we couldn't offload the high earners at the football club, our assets were our young players. And I sold two of the brightest young players in British football, who would give their debuts to Jack Butland and Nathan Redmond for minimal fees. I think we got 7-8 million max for them, when we should have been hitting towards 20 million. But it was desperation state, and we had to raise some funds. But also at this time, it was still keep the club in the Championship from the club's point of view. But from the fans' point of view, they were wanting to challenge for promotion. And it wasn't possible because, ultimately, we had a League One wage bill, and we were keeping them in. And obviously we had that amazing date. It was the Reebok then, the Macron Stadium now, Reebok at Bolton, where we waited till the 96th minute to get the equaliser through Paul Caddis to keep us in the league and celebrate with 5,000 Brummies behind the goal, and caused an incident when obviously I ran down the side of the pitch, which to this day my agent keeps saying if I had been that quick when I played, I would have probably got the move to Barca I was looking for us. So no, that was a day of relief. I mean, many people have said to us, you must have partied late into the night after that. And in all honesty, I went out for a meal with my family and had a glass of wine, and I hadn't even got through the start, and asked if it was okay if we could go home, because I was physically and mentally drained by what had gone on the lead up to the game. Knew how big it was. The pressure, talk about pressure on the game, because it would have been Armageddon, I think, if Birmingham at that time had went into League One with their finances how they are, and we survived it. But it was always going to be hard, because my recruitment the following summer was still along the lines of lads who hadn't played a lot in the Championship, and the budget being very similar. As I said, bottom three in the Championship to League One. So, and then I think it was the end of October when I lost my job.
Blackpool followed, and I remember at the time watching from afar thinking, why is Lee Clark taking that job? He's went from one to put it politely, shit show at Birmingham, and he's joined an even worse shit show at Blackpool.
And you know what? You need an ego to be a manager, and that was me ego had kicked in into overdrive. It was like, I'll show Birmingham, etc. They had 4 points, I think, from 14 games, Blackpool, and if I can get these out of this mess, you know, which I'd showed that I can get or keep clubs in the Championship on tough setups. If I could keep Blackpool in under this, and you just think it's a lack of confidence with the players. But I quickly realised that when I was in there was just so many facets of the club. You know, when I've talked about infrastructures and that about other clubs, this had nothing. It just had a nice up to date modern stadium. The stadium pitch was horrific.
It was. I remember
it was like the beach. It was horrendous.
It was the worst I think it had ever been.
Well, we used to after home games, we used to get complaints from the FA that the away clubs had complained about the state of the pitch. Usually when you're in the training ground, Jimmy Armfield, God rest his soul, the legend at Blackpool, ex-England player, great man, used to come in to see us most days and would chat, and he said that the training ground hadn't changed from the 60s, from when he'd played. So, and then there was the incident of the last game of the season when the game got abandoned after 70 minutes against Huddersfield when they invaded the pitch. The home games weren't like home games because the fans had that much hatred towards the ownership. It was a toxic atmosphere, really. And I should have got out quicker. I was going to, and to this day, I've done it out of loyalty. In all the clubs I've been at, I've brought young players through. I like to give young players a chance. And there was 2 young boys there, Dominic Telford and Mark Warrington, who I'd give a chance to. And I'd promised their families that no matter what, I would look after them. And I felt like halfway through the 6 months I had there, 7 months, or however long it was, it would be unfair after I'd give their assurances that I would walk out. And then I waited till the end of the season before I quit. People think I quit because we went down. Nothing to do with that. They wanted me to stay, rebuild. I had been looking at players about rebuilding to get back out of League One into the Championship, and I just felt it wasn't what I was in football for. My family didn't feel comfortable coming to the games. Not that they were getting any kind of abuse. It was just because of the actual atmosphere and around the stadiums. And I fully get why the fans were like that. You know, there was I wasn't taking sides with anyone, and unfortunately, because I was appointed by the ownership, a lot of the fans seen me as one of them, and it didn't work out in any way, shape or form. We had a little spell, October, November, where we beat Brighton, Birmingham and Millwall, and it gave us a little inkling.
Birmingham, happy days.
Yeah, it gave us a little inkling that we could do it, but then, you know, in the January window, my door was like a revolving door. Players coming to see us, wanting to get out in any way. They were taking pay cuts, they were dropping down the league. It didn't, you know, and it was a tough period.
And then you went to Kilmarnock and you did a really good job there.
Yeah, we took over. They were joint bottom, second bottom. They were on point, but joint bottom on the points, same points as Dundee United, who eventually went. And in Scotland, the one team goes down from the Scottish Premier League, and the team second bottom, they play off the team that wins the playoffs from the Championship. So we'd accumulated enough points to knew that we're going to get a second chance basically in the playoffs. And we played Falkirk. We played really well in the away leg, gave away a horrible goal in injury time, so we're 1-0 down. And on the Friday, and then on the Sunday in the second leg, we just blew them away. We were 3-0 up after 15 minutes. We had a lot of power and pace in the team, and at the end of the game, when I addressed the supporters with great support, I promised them that wouldn't be the case anymore and wouldn't be in that position. And I built a squad. I changed a lot of players. I built a squad, and I left exactly to the day I arrived. 1 year, Valentine's Day. I joined them. Valentine's Day, I left them, and we're in the top 6 in Scotland, and for a club at that time of Kilmarnock stature and finances, for to be in the top 6 was a great achievement. And then my old assistant Lee McCulloch took over. He kept them in the top 8, so there was progress. That finished, you know, there'd been a lot of progress. It jumped 4 or 5 places, the club, And then he just couldn't get them going. And when he took over permanently the following season, but then Steve Clarke come in and he's got them flying high again.
And then you ended up going to Bury. I don't know.
Bury, whichever. Yeah, I mean, it was another. The first part of it was come and save we again. They were second bottom in League One, 14 games to go, and we went in and we'd done the job. We kept them in the league. And then we rebuilt the squad, and I was hoping to get them in the top 6. It's a challenge to get promoted. We felt we built a good squad, and we had an up and down start of the season, but we still, even though the day I left, we still, I think, about 7 points from the playoffs. We weren't where we wanted to be. We certainly wouldn't have went down, which ended up happening. They went through another 3 managers, give it to Ryan Lowe twice, but Ryan Lowe, Chris Laketti, Ryan Lowe again, and that season went from bad to worse. And you'll get what I'm saying here, because one of your outstanding players this season was a player I took in the Bury, Chris Maguire. And the difference between Chris Maguire signing for Sunderland and Chris Maguire signing for Bury, we got Chris very, very late in the summer window, and Chris was without a club, so he was basically training on his own. He wasn't doing football fitness, and the lad was being diligent, but he was just going in the gym, and he wasn't football fit. He whenever he played for us, he'd make massive contributions, but we couldn't get him at a consistent level. Hughes got him, Sunderland got him, start pre-season. Jack Ross had time to implement him into his group and implement the fitness. Chris has got a little bit of old school in him in how he works, but there was no doubt when I found out he was coming to Sunderland, this place would be made for him. He loves playing in big environments. He would love being in the Stadium of Light. I got that one. And they got him early, and they could work him and get him football fit, ready for the season. And so it's no surprise to me when I'm hearing these reports. And Chris himself said he didn't enjoy his year at Bury, and I fully get that. It wasn't for what he was wanting to be or do, and they never seen the best of him at Bury, because it did in flashes. There was some outstanding things that he'd done, and we could see it every day on the training ground. But I'm convinced it was because we got him at the wrong time of pre-season. I flew up to Aberdeen with the owner to convince him right at the start. He was one of my first targets, but he had that many options because he's a good player at League One level. He's a very, very good player. He had that many options. He wanted to see what was out there, and when he eventually decided to come to us, I don't even think he played a pre-season game for us. He went straight. It was leading up to the league campaign, and that's the reason I think that it didn't work out for him with us.
And finally, before I let you sign off, what do you make of Sunderland right now? Obviously, good start of the season, top 2 in League One, new ownership, new everything at the club. What have you made of the?
It looks like it's what was needed. I'm disappointed. I wanted me big pal Chris Coleman to come in and do the job. I know he had his hands tied behind his back when he came in. I think all the managers over the last couple of years who've been in probably wished they had had this opportunity. They were coming in when it was a clean slate, but it wasn't to be. I knew what the work Jack Ross had been doing from his time in Scotland. He took over St Mirren when they weren't doing particularly well, and he built that club up and got them into the Scottish Premier League outstandingly, because the Championship in Scotland's a very tough league. There's some clubs, there's 5 or 6 clubs in there who've been big clubs in Scotland. So for him to get that level of consistency, so you knew that if the new ownership, like they were saying when they took over, were going to back the manager, there'd be that opportunity. And I think what they've all done, they've brought the feel-good factor back to the club. I think the fans for too many years had just been in the doldrums. They had that little short spell under Sam where things got better, and they thought there was a bit of light at the end of the tunnel, but it didn't prove to be once Sam left. And for me, it's good that they've got ownership now that are taking care of the club. It was horrendous. I went back to the Stadium Light to watch my sons in Newcastle United's academy, and they played Sunderland at the Stadium Light, and it's one of the first times I'd come back and seen the stadium empty, and you seen the way it had been run down with the seats, the way they'd gone, and it must have been horrendous for the fans to see that. So little things like that to get it looking lovely again and back to looking like a Premier League stadium, which it is. And I think it's brought the feel-good factor back with the fans. And I said all along, even at the start of the season, to people that no matter what league they were playing, if they got on a good run, they'd have to think about reopening the top tier of the stadium again because the place would fill out. And I think that's proven to be the case and probably will be before the season finishes.
So do you think for Sunderland this year, do you think promotion?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I watched the game against Port Vale. I've got to say I haven't seen a lot of their games this season, but I watched the full game against Port Vale in the Cup, and I thought for the first 20 minutes they were outstanding. Took their foot off the gas a little bit in terms of nearly let Port Vale back into it, but that gave us a inkling of what they were going to be like. So I can imagine, obviously working in League One, that with the players that the manager's brought in, the academy boys that he's brought through, they've got that identity with the club, they've got that link with the fans. I think come May there'll be celebrations on hand, yeah, ready to get back in the Championship. But I think with the new ownership, they'll not be satisfied with that. They'll be wanting to kick the club back into the Premier League, because ultimately they don't have to then go and spend money on a new stadium or a new training ground, because they've already got Premier League facilities. So all the money that they can make by getting those promotions and new sponsorship and investment can be spent wisely on the squad.
Hopefully snowball. You never know, I might go for a double.
Momentum's huge in football, and especially when you've got the whole club pushing as one, which hopefully the first promotion to get the club back from League One. I'm not one of these North East lads in any way that, you know, revels in other North East clubs not doing well. I would love all three, the big clubs in the area, Middlesbrough, Sunderland and Newcastle, to be in the Premier League. I think because the fans look forward to those games so much, and anyway, why do we not want them competing in the same league? As long as it's the Premier League, we don't want them competing in the Championship. So let's get them all back in there and enjoy those games, and let other parts of the country have teams not competing in there.
I just want to thank you, Lee, for coming on, because you easily could have turned us down and said, no, I'm not going to rehash them old stories. So I want to thank you for taking the time out and speaking to us.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to put my side of the story, because there's been, you know what the rumour mill's like, been many sides of it dished out there. Not all of it's been exactly what happened.
I'm sure there's still people who won't like you.
Absolutely. Listen, that's never going to change, and unfortunately that's of my own doing, but you know, as long as they know the full story to it all, that they can make their own mind up.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on, and yeah, thanks for
your
time.
Cheers.